The fire alarm blared through Fire Station 23 at 2:47 a.m., jolting Mike Chen from his light sleep. He had been a firefighter in Seattle for 6 years, but night calls always sent the same surge of adrenaline through his body. Within minutes, he and his team were racing through the quiet streets, their trucks' sirens cutting through the night's silence. Apartment fire at Highland Tower, Captain Rodriguez announced. Possible residents still inside. Mike watched as orange flames flickered from the windows of the 12-story building. Thick, dark smoke poured into the night sky, making the stars above disappear. As they pulled up to the scene, residents in pajamas and hastily grabbed coats huddled in the parking lot. "Third floor still has people," someone shouted from the crowd. Mike and his partner Tom didn't hesitate. They grabbed their gear and headed into the building, their oxygen masks secure. The heat hit them as soon as they entered, and the smoke made visibility poor even with their powerful flashlights. "Fire department, call out if you can hear us," Mike shouted as they climbed the stairs. The third floor was thick with smoke, and flames licked at the walls from one of the apartments. That's when Mike heard it, a strange musical sound unlike anything he'd ever encountered before. It wasn't quite crying, but it definitely meant distress. He followed the sound to apartment 304, where the door was hot to the touch. "Someone's in there," he called to Tom. They broke down the door together, and Mike's heart nearly stopped at what he saw. Through the smoke and flames, he spotted two figures huddled in the corner of the living room. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him because of the smoke. The woman was tall, impossibly tall, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer even in the dark. Next to her was a child, probably around 8 years old, with the same ethereal appearance. Strange, glowing symbols pulsed on their skin like gentle blue heartbeats. Mike didn't have time to process what he was seeing. The ceiling groaned ominously above them, and pieces of burning debris were falling around them. "We need to get you out," he shouted, approaching them. The woman's eyes met his. They were completely silver, with no pupils, and she clutched her child tighter. "Please," she said, her voice carrying an odd musical quality. "Help my daughter." Mike didn't hesitate. He scooped up the child while Tom helped the woman to her feet. The girl was surprisingly light in his arms, almost weightless. They made their way back to the hallway, just as a section of the ceiling collapsed where they had been standing moments before. The journey down the stairs was tense. The woman moved gracefully despite the chaos, but Mike could see she was struggling to breathe. Her skin's glow was fading, and the symbols were pulsing slower. When they finally burst out of the building into the fresh air, Mike expected gasps of shock from the crowd at the strange appearance of the people they'd rescued. Instead, he watched in amazement as the woman and child's skin seemed to shift and change, taking on a human appearance right before his eyes. The woman looked at Mike with now normal brown eyes, but he could still see a silvery sheen beneath the surface when she blinked. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't know what you've done." Mike stood there, still holding the child, wondering if the smoke had made him hallucinate the whole thing. But then the girl in his arms touched his cheek with her small hand, and for a brief moment, the symbols on her skin glowed again. He knew at that moment that his life would never be the same. Within an hour of the rescue, black SUVs with tinted windows surrounded the area. Men and women in dark suits appeared, moving with purpose through the crowd of onlookers and firefighters. Mike sat on the back of his truck, still trying to process what he had seen in the burning building. Firefighter Chen. A tall woman in a crisp black suit approached him. Her badge identified her as Agent Sarah Martinez. "We need you to come with us." Before Mike could respond, the silver-skinned woman, now appearing human, stepped forward. "He stays with us," she said firmly. Her voice still carried that musical quality that made Mike's ears tingle. "Your protocols state that first contact personnel remain under our jurisdiction." Agent Martinez's eyes widened. "You're the Lumerian ambassador." "I am Lyra." "Yes." The woman's human disguise flickered for a moment, revealing her true silvery form. And this firefighter has earned the right to know the truth. They took Mike to a secure facility outside the city. The building looked like a normal office from the outside, but inside, it was filled with technology he'd never seen before. Lyra's daughter, Aria, hadn't left his side since the rescue, holding his hand as they walked through the gleaming corridors. In a large conference room, Lyra explained everything. "We are Lumerians," she said, letting her human disguise fade completely. "We've been living among humans for the past 50 years, studying your culture and development." Mike watched in amazement as holographic images appeared above the conference table, showing ships and cities that looked like they were made of crystal and light. "There are 17 species in the Galactic Federation," Lyra continued. "Earth is being evaluated for membership." "But why hide?" Mike asked, finding his voice. "Why not just introduce yourselves?" Agent Martinez answered this time. "Some humans know about them. World leaders, key scientists, a few military personnel. We've been preparing humanity slowly for full contact." "The fire wasn't supposed to happen," Lyra said softly, placing her hand on Aria's head. "Our cloaking technology malfunctioned during a power surge. We couldn't teleport out without risking detection by unauthorized observers." "And now?" Mike asked, looking at the strange symbols that had started glowing on his own arm, where Aria had touched him earlier. Lyra's silver eyes seemed to shine brighter. "Now you're part of something bigger. In our culture, saving a life creates a bond. Saving a child." She paused, her symbols pulsing with a blue light. "It makes you family." Agent Martinez looked uncomfortable. "Ambassador, the protocols don't account for this level of integration with a civilian." "The protocols," Lyra said firmly, "were made before we understood human capacity for selfless action. Your people continue to surprise us." Mike Chen ran into a burning building to save what he clearly saw were aliens. He didn't hesitate. He didn't question. He simply helped. Aria suddenly spoke up, her child's voice carrying the same musical tone as her mother's. "The symbols on his arm mean he's connected to us now. It's already happening." Mike looked at his arm again, watching the faint pattern swirl beneath his skin. He thought about his simple life as a firefighter, how normal everything had been just hours ago. Now he was sitting in a secret facility, talking to aliens who looked like living mercury, with strange markings appearing on his skin. "Connected how?" he asked, both fascinated and nervous. Lyra's expression turned serious. "That's what we need to discuss, because what's happening to you, it's never happened to a human before. And there are those who will be very interested in this development." The symbols on Mike's arm pulsed once, as if in agreement, and he knew his ordinary life was over for good. Mike sat in his apartment a week after the fire, staring at the strange symbols that now covered most of his left arm. They glowed softly in the dark, casting a gentle blue light on his walls. He hadn't been able to return to work yet. Agent Martinez had arranged medical leave to give him time to adjust. A soft chime rang through his apartment, a sound he now recognized as Lumerian technology. Lyra and Aria appeared in his living room, their teleportation leaving behind a brief shimmer of silver light. "Still getting used to that," Mike mumbled, but smiled when Aria ran to give him a hug. The symbols on their arms glowed brighter when they touched. "We need to talk about the life debt," Lyra said, sitting down gracefully on his couch. Even in her human disguise, she moved like flowing water. "There are things you need to understand about what's happening." "You mean why I'm being followed?" Mike asked. He'd noticed the unmarked cars outside his apartment, and the strange figures that appeared in reflections but vanished when he turned to look. "Or why I can suddenly understand languages I've never studied." Lyra's expression turned serious. "Both. In Lumerian culture, when someone saves a life, especially a child's life, it creates a bond deeper than mere gratitude. It's a biological and spiritual connection." Aria climbed onto Mike's lap, her silver hair, now visible as their disguises dropped, flowing like starlight. "Show him, Mother," she said excitedly. Lyra raised her hand, and suddenly the air filled with floating lights that formed images. Mike saw strange cities made of crystal, vast ships that looked like swimming sea creatures, and beings of different shapes and sizes. Our species evolved from creatures of pure energy, Lyra explained. We learned to take physical form, but our essence remains connected to the universe's fundamental forces. When we form a life debt, we share this connection. That's why I can see them watching us, Mike realized. The others who look almost like you, but different. Lyra nodded grimly. Lumerian observers. Our council is very interested in you, Mike Chen. No human has ever carried our marks before. Many didn't think it was possible. She paused, looking troubled. But they aren't the only ones watching. As if on cue, the symbols on Mike's arm tingled. He'd learned this meant danger was near. Looking out his window, he saw 3 figures in dark clothing across the street, their forms shifting slightly in the streetlight. Drachnids, Lyra said quietly. They believe humans aren't ready for contact with advanced species. They've been trying to prevent Earth from joining the Federation for decades. And now they're interested in me because, Mike asked, though he was starting to guess the answer. Because you proved them wrong, Arya said simply, touching the glowing marks on his arm. You show humans can be like us. Lyra stood up suddenly, her symbols flashing in alarm. We need to move. They're coming. The figures across the street had vanished, but Mike could feel they were getting closer. Pack what you need, Lyra instructed. The life debt means we're bound to protect each other. You're part of our family now, and we need to keep you safe until you understand your new abilities. Mike quickly grabbed a bag and stuffed it with clothes and essential items. As he moved, he noticed he was faster than before, more graceful. The symbols on his arm pulsed with energy. Where are we going? He asked, as Arya took his hand. Lyra's form shimmed, her true silver skin showing through her disguise. To our real home. It's time you saw what you're truly part of. The air around them began to glow, and Mike's apartment faded away in a flash of silver light. His last thought before they teleported was that saving that little girl from the fire had changed not just his life, but possibly the future of human civilization itself. The Lumerian sanctuary looked like a crystal palace floating in space, though Lyra explained they were actually still on Earth, just hidden in a pocket dimension. Mike stood at a window, watching clouds pass by far below, while strange, glowing creatures flew past outside. Your transformation is progressing faster than we expected, Lyra said, approaching with a device that looked like a silver mirror. When she held it up, Mike could see waves of energy flowing through his body, mixing with what appeared to be his normal blood flow. Is that why I keep getting these flashes? He asked. Just that morning, he'd caught a falling cup before it hit the ground, moving faster than he thought possible. He'd also started seeing strange patterns in everyday things. Numbers, movements, even people's emotions appeared to him as visible waves of color. Yes, Lyra smiled, her silver skin shimmering with pleased patterns. Your human DNA is adapting to our biological gifts remarkably well. Usually this process would take years, but you. She was interrupted by Arya rushing into the room, her symbols flashing with excitement. Father Mike, look what I can teach you. The young Lumerian had started calling him father since their escape, and somehow it felt natural. Arya held up her hands, and suddenly small orbs of light appeared, dancing between her fingers. Mike watched in amazement as she shaped them into different patterns, stars, animals, and finally a perfect miniature replica of Earth. You try, she said, taking his hands. Feel the energy inside you. It's like humming a song with your mind. Mike concentrated, feeling the strange new power that had been growing inside him. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, tiny sparks of light began to form above his palms. That's impossible, a new voice said. They turned to see Agent Martinez standing in the doorway, her usual composed expression showing surprise. Humans shouldn't be able to manipulate quantum energy like that. Yet he can, Lyra said proudly. The life debt is more than just a cultural tradition. It's an exchange of evolutionary gifts. Mike's body is adapting to handle abilities that took our species millennia to develop. Suddenly, Mike's head filled with a sharp ringing. The symbols on his arm flashed bright red, a warning. Without thinking, he threw up his hands, and a shield of pure energy formed around them, just as the window exploded inward. Dark figures poured through the broken window, their forms shifting between solid and shadow. Drachnid warriors, Mike realized, remembering Lyra's warnings about them. "Protect area," Lyra shouted, her own hands glowing with power. Agent Martinez pulled out what looked like a normal gun, but it fired beams of blue energy. Mike acted on instinct. The new power flowing through him responded to his will, creating barriers of light that blocked the Drachnids' attacks. He could see their movements before they happened, predict their attacks before they struck. The human must not be allowed to complete the transformation. One of the Drachnids hissed, its voice like grinding metal. "It will disrupt the balance." Mike felt Aria's small hand slip into his, and suddenly their powers linked. Together, they created a pulse of energy that threw the attackers back through the window. Lyra quickly sealed the breach with a wave of her hand. "They'll be back," Agent Martinez said grimly, checking her weapon. "And next time, they'll bring more forces." Mike looked at his hands, still glowing with power he barely understood. The symbols on his arm had changed again, forming new patterns that matched Aria's exactly. "How much more am I going to change?" he asked Lyra. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The real question is, how much more will you change us? No human has ever shown this level of adaptation. You're becoming something entirely new, perhaps exactly what both our species need." Outside the sanctuary's repaired window, the sun rose over Earth's curve, and Mike wondered if he was watching the dawn of not just a new day, but a new era for humanity. The Lumerian Council chamber looked like the inside of a giant diamond, with walls that shifted colors as 12 silver-skinned elders floated in their crystal seats. Mike stood in the center with Lyra and Aria, trying to stay calm as the council members examined him with their glowing eyes. The fire was not an accident, the head counselor announced, her voice echoing with musical tones. "We have discovered evidence of Drachnid interference with the cloaking systems." Mike felt his stomach drop. "You mean they planned this? They wanted me to find Lyra and Aria." "Not you specifically," another counselor said, his symbols pulsing with deep blue light. "They sought to prove humans would ignore alien life in danger, that your species is too selfish to join the Federation." Lyra stepped forward, her own symbols bright with anger. Instead, Mike proved the opposite. He ran into danger to save strangers who weren't even human. Images appeared in the air around them. Security footage from the apartment building. Mike watched himself running into the flames, saw the moment he discovered Lyra and Aria. The council chamber filled with whispers as they watched him carry Aria to safety without hesitation. "But why?" Mike asked. "Why go through all this trouble?" Agent Martinez, who had been quietly observing from the side, spoke up. "Because Earth's admission to the Federation would shift the balance of power. Isn't that right?" She looked directly at the head counselor. The elder Lumerian nodded slowly. "Humans have something unique, an ability to adapt, to change, to grow faster than any species we've encountered. The Drachnids fear this potential." Suddenly, Mike's symbols flashed red again. At the same time, alarms began blaring throughout the chamber. A holographic screen appeared, showing multiple ships appearing around the sanctuary. "Drachnid warships," Lyra gasped. "But how did they find us?" "Betrayal," Aria said quietly, pointing to one of the council members whose symbols were pulsing with an unusual pattern. "He's been helping them." The accused counselor's disguise flickered, revealing glimpses of a darker, shadowy form underneath. "Humans cannot be allowed to join the Federation," he snarled, his voice losing its musical quality. "This one is already too powerful. Look how quickly he masters our abilities." Mike didn't think. He just acted. As the disguised Drachnid pulled out a weapon, Mike created a shield of energy around himself and his family. The blast bounced off his barrier, creating spiderweb cracks in the chamber's crystalline walls. The fire was just the beginning. The traitor laughed. "We needed to know if humans could accept the life debt changes. Now we know they can. You've proven too dangerous to live." Agent Martinez's energy weapon fired, catching the traitor in the shoulder. Lumerian security forces rushed in, but the damage was done. Through the chamber's windows, they could see more Drachnid ships appearing. "They're not just here for me, are they?" Mike asked, looking at Lyra. "This is about Earth." Lyra nodded grimly. "If humans can adapt to our powers this quickly, the Drachnids fear what might happen when Earth joins the Federation. You've become living proof of humanity's potential." The head counselor rose from her seat, her simples glowing with determination. "We must evacuate the sanctuary. Mike Chen, you and your family must be protected. You've become more important than you know." As they rushed from the chamber, Mike caught glimpses of battle breaking out in space around them. He held Aria's hand tightly while creating shields to protect their retreat, each use of his powers feeling more natural than the last. "What do we do now?" he asked Lyra as they ran. "Now," she said, her expression both worried and proud, "we fight for Earth's future. And thanks to you, we know humanity is ready for that fight." Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a secret human Lumerian base, Mike paced anxiously. The symbols on his arm pulsed with swirling patterns that matched his troubled thoughts. It had been 3 days since their escape from the sanctuary, and the situation had only grown more complex. "The Drachnids have given Earth's governments an ultimatum," Agent Martinez announced, entering the room with Lyra. "Either they hand you over, or they'll reveal themselves to the entire human race, causing worldwide panic." "They can't do that," Aria protested. She sat cross-legged on a floating crystal platform, practicing her energy manipulation. "It breaks all the Federation's laws." "They don't care about laws anymore," Lyra said softly. Her silver skin seemed dimmer than usual, showing her exhaustion. "They're desperate to prevent Earth from joining the Federation." Mike stopped pacing and looked at the holographic display showing news from around the world. Strange lights in the sky, unexplained phenomena, and mysterious signals were already causing speculation and fear. The Drachnids were starting their plan. "There's something else," Agent Martinez said, her expression grave. "The Federation Council is convening an emergency session. They're considering Earth's membership now, years ahead of schedule." "Because of me?" Mike asked, though he already knew the answer. Lyra nodded. "Your successful integration with our abilities has proved humanity's readiness, but it's also proved the Drachnids' point about how quickly humans can advance." She paused, her symbols pulsing with concern. "They fear that within a generation, humanity could become more powerful than any current Federation species." A new hologram appeared, showing the Federation's Grand Assembly Hall. Thousands of beings from different species were gathering, preparing to vote on Earth's fate. "You have a choice to make, Mike," Agent Martinez said. "The President wants you to appear before the Federation Assembly. Your testimony could secure Earth's membership and protection. But the Drachnids will try to stop you," Aria added, floating down from her platform to hold Mike's hand. "They'll do anything to prevent you from reaching the assembly." Mike looked at his reflection in the metal wall. His eyes now had a slight silver sheen, and the symbols on his skin had spread across most of his body. He wasn't just human anymore, but he wasn't fully Lumerian either. He was something new. "What happens if I don't go?" he asked quietly. "The Drachnids will reveal themselves gradually, causing fear and chaos," Lyra explained. "They'll turn humanity against the idea of alien life before official contact can be made. Earth will remain isolated, vulnerable. And if I do go, you'll be a target," Agent Martinez warned. Every Drachnid agent in the galaxy will try to stop you. Even if you reach the assembly, showing your abilities could make some Federation species support the Drachnid's fears. Mike closed his eyes, feeling the energy flowing through him. He could sense Aria's concern, Lyra's love, and the weight of billions of human lives who had no idea their future was being decided. When I ran into that fire, he said slowly, opening his eyes, I didn't think about the consequences. I just knew I had to help. He straightened up, his symbols glowing brighter. This isn't any different. You'll do it, Lyra asked, hope filling her musical voice. Mike nodded, pulling Aria into a hug while reaching for Lyra's hand. I'm going to speak to the assembly, not just for Earth, but for every species that thinks we can't work together, can't share our gifts, and make each other better. The symbols on all three of them glowed in harmony, their shared bond growing stronger. Well then, Agent Martinez said, allowing herself a small smile, we better start planning how to get you there alive. The Federation Assembly Hall hung in space like a giant glass flower, its crystal petals slowly rotating around a central core. Mike stood in a preparation chamber with Lyra and Aria, watching hundreds of ships arrive carrying representatives from every known intelligent species. 3 attempts to stop us from reaching here, Agent Martinez said, checking the latest security reports. And that was just during our approach. Mike nodded, remembering the space battles they'd barely survived. His new powers had grown even stronger during their journey, allowing him to help defend their ship. The symbols on his skin now glowed with a brightness that matched any full Lumerian's. The assembly is ready, a tall crystalline being announced, its body chiming like bells as it moved. They will hear Earth's case now. Mike took a deep breath. Stay close, he told Aria, who hadn't left his side since their last battle with the Drachnids. She nodded, her small hand finding his. They entered the main chamber, which was larger than any stadium Mike had ever seen. Thousands of beings filled the circular rows, some looking almost human, others completely alien. The Drachnid delegation sat in shadow, their dark forms shifting restlessly. Approach, Michael Chen of Earth. A voice echoed in all languages at once. The High Council of the Federation, made up of the oldest members of each species, floated on platforms above the assembly. Mike walked forward, feeling the weight of countless eyes upon him. Lyra and Aria moved with him, their family bond visible in the matching patterns that flowed across their skin. The Drachnids have accused humanity of being too dangerous to join the Federation, one council member announced. They claim your rapid adaptation to Lumerian abilities proves humans will evolve too quickly, disrupting the balance of power. We submit the fire incident as evidence, the Drachnid speaker hissed, its form billowing like dark smoke. This human was deliberately tested. While his compassion is admirable, his transformation is frightening. Within weeks, he mastered abilities that take Lumerians years to develop. Murmurs spread through the assembly. Mike could sense fear and uncertainty rippling through the crowd. Is this true? The High Council asked. Were you aware it was a test? Mike stepped forward. No, he said firmly, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. I'm a firefighter. When I heard there were people trapped in that building, I didn't think about whether they were human or alien. I didn't consider the consequences. I just knew I had to help. He raised his hand, creating a display of energy that showed the rescue from his perspective. The assembly watched as he ran into the flames, saw his shock at discovering Lyra and Aria's true nature, and witnessed his unhesitating decision to save them anyway. The Drachnids say I prove humans are dangerous, Mike continued. But I think I prove something else. I prove that humans and aliens can become true family. He turned to Aria, who was now floating slightly off the ground in excitement. I proved that our differences don't have to divide us. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. Space around the assembly hall filled with Drachnid warships, appearing from cloaked physicians. If we can't convince you, the Drachnid speaker snarled, we'll force our point. Mike's symbols flashed brilliant blue. Without hesitation, He created a massive energy shield around the entire assembly hall, just as the first Drachnid shots fired. The attack splashed harmlessly against his barrier. "You see," he called out to the stunned assembly, "I don't use these powers to dominate or control. I use them to protect everyone, not just humans, not just my family." Isn't that what the Federation should stand for? The High Council members looked at each other, their various forms showing signs of approval. The trial of humanity had taken an unexpected turn, and Mike stood ready, protecting aliens and humans alike, as the space battle raged around them. 1 month after the battle at the Federation Assembly Hall, Mike stood on a platform at Kennedy Space Center, watching history unfold. The massive ship before him gleamed in the Florida sunshine, its hull a perfect blend of human and Lumerian technology. "First official Federation starship built on Earth," Agent Martinez said proudly, now wearing the uniform of the new Earth Federation Joint Command. "And you get to be on its maiden voyage." Mike smiled, feeling the symbols on his skin pulse with excitement. After his defense of the assembly hall, the Federation vote had been unanimous. Earth was not only admitted but fast-tracked for full membership. The Drachnids, their plot exposed and their forces defeated, had been forced to accept the decision. "Father Mike," Aria's voice chimed as she floated down from the ship's entry ramp. She no longer needed to hide her true form in public. None of them did. "Mother says the quantum drive is ready for testing." In the weeks since Earth's admission to the Federation, changes had come faster than anyone expected. The public revelation of alien life had been managed carefully, with Mike's story helping to show humanity's potential for acceptance and growth. His unique family, human, Lumerian, bound by heroism and love, became a symbol of hope. "The Life Debt Integration Program starts next week," Lyra said, appearing beside them in a shimmer of silver light. She now served as head of Earth's Cultural Exchange Initiative. 10,000 human volunteers, ready to bond with families from different Federation species. "Are they ready?" Mike asked, watching crowds gather behind the safety barriers. Humans and aliens mingled freely, their differences forgotten in their shared excitement. "Thanks to you, they are," Agent Martinez answered. "Your example showed it could work. Humans and aliens, becoming true family, sharing abilities and knowledge." She checked her tablet. Applications for the program are already in the millions. Mike felt a familiar tingle in his symbols, but this time, it wasn't warning of danger. He turned to see the Federation High Council approaching, their various forms drawing gasps of wonder from the crowd. "Michael Chen," the head counselor's voice rang out. "Are you prepared to serve as Earth's first Federation ambassador?" Mike looked at his family. Aria beamed up at him, her silver hair floating in the breeze. Lyra's symbols pulsed with pride and love. Even Agent Martinez smiled, nodding in approval. "I'm ready," he said, "but I have a request." The council members indicated for him to continue. "The ship," Mike said, gesturing to the massive vessel behind them. "I want to name it Phoenix, after the mythical bird that rises from fire," one council member asked. Mike nodded, "Because that's what happened to all of us. A fire brought us together, taught us we could rise above our differences, become something new." He took Aria's hand, feeling their shared power flow between them. "Something better." The council approved, and cheers erupted from the crowd as the ship's name appeared on its hull in glowing letters. "Ready for launch in 10 minutes, a voice announced over the speakers. Mike took his place between Lyra and Aria, their symbols glowing in harmony. Behind them, the Phoenix hummed with power, ready to carry humanity's first official Federation family into the stars. Before them stretched a future none of them could have imagined when Mike ran into that burning building. "You know," he said to his family as they walked up the entry ramp together, "when people ask about the reward for saving you that day, they always expect me to talk about the powers or becoming ambassador. But that's not it, is it?" Aria asked, floating beside him. Mike pulled both her and Lyra into a hug. "No, the real reward was finding you. Everything else is just a bonus." As the Phoenix lifted off into a bright new future, Mike thought about how sometimes the greatest rewards come not from what you gain, but from what you're willing to risk to help others. And that, he realized, was the most human truth of all.